So Ukraine's Interior Ministry official have asked residents to not leave their homes and also to prepare Molotov cocktails as the Russian forces have entered the Oblom district in Kyiv, just 20 kilometres from the centre of Kyiv, asking them to prepare Molotov cocktails to try and defend themselves and to fight the invasion.
Well, we're now joined by Russian human rights lawyer Elena Selina and live from Kyiv by British-Ukrainian student Valentina Butenko. We spoke to you yesterday, Valentina, where you'd made the decision to be there with your family to stand firm and talk, fighting talk on behalf of Ukraine. You must have had a terrible, terrible night. How are you feeling this morning?
Yes, I can't really say I slept at all at night. It's a very eerie feeling. If yesterday it was, obviously a feeling of shock and almost disbelief at what had happened, now there's this kind of really settled fear that this conflict is just getting worse. We aren't getting really any concrete military support from the West that can mean anything for our protection, and there's not many options for us protection. The missile shell that was shot down over Kyiv this morning flew over my house in the morning. We've been hearing shelling and gunfire all night. This conflict is really intensifying, and there doesn't look to be any way out or any outside support that can concretely deter Russia.
I don't want to scare you further, but we've just in the last few seconds while you've been speaking had word that the Ukrainian army says armed forces are actually engaged in fighting in the outskirts of the capital of Kyiv, in Dima and Ivankiv, where a large number of Russian armoured vehicles have now advanced. It must be utterly terrifying. It feels awful to be talking to you in this moment of awful peril, and Ben and I feel powerless, as so many of our viewers do, to do anything to help. What can you do?
Well, it is terrifying. And in a sense, Ukraine is essentially facing down single-handedly one of the most, if not the most powerful army in the whole world. But when it comes to what we can do, every single little incremental thing counts right now, just as much as, our government is calling on our people in certain regions to prepare their own Molotov cocktails and to protect themselves. We need every single person in the West to call on the government for really, really debilitating sanctions to Russia, because, I want the world to understand that we're not dealing with a politician here. We're not dealing with a head of state. We are dealing with a terrorist, an imperialist, possibly a psychopath. And unless the cost of this war is made completely inexcusable to him and his crony government, then he is not going to stop. And we're talking about the loss of human lives. We're talking about the murder of people. We're talking about, people like me hearing gunfire at night, and things like completely cutting off Russia from SWIFT and sending us military aid it's just completely essential. It's not a question, because otherwise Russia just isn't going to stop.
Valentina, you have heard undoubtedly, I'm sure, of the Boris Johnson and Joe Biden making these claims and saying that they're going to implement these sanctions. Does that feel like enough? Because any sort of financial sanction is not going to have an impact immediately. That's going to take a while for the Russians to feel anything from that, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the sanctions that Joe Biden, that Boris Johnson have announced, they're important, and they do mean something in the long term. But as you said, Russia has been preparing itself for war for a long time, and their economy is essentially ready for war. And, Russia also doesn't care enough about its own people or civilians to, try to protect them from, the effect of these economic sanctions in the way that their government has reinforced itself and protects itself. And if the aid is not military and it is not immediate, and I'm not asking troops to be sent into my country, I'm asking for technical aid, for military aid, for financing, then once again, Ukraine cannot face down the world's most powerful army by itself. Because, yes, we are protecting our country with everything we have, but we're also protecting European security here. And we cannot be a buffer zone for Europe or for you. And as much as it pains me to say this, the response of Europe, the response of Germany has been almost insulting to me personally as a Ukrainian citizen. The fact that rockets being shot at civilian areas is not enough for Germany to say that we will take some economic pain and cut Russia off from SWIFT in order to, protect these people's lives. That is to some extent an insult to me personally, an insult to Ukrainian people, because if this is still just a game of politics for Germany, for Europe, then they clearly don't understand what Ukraine is experiencing and the cost of this in the long term.
Valentina, you're so young and you're so brave and you're speaking in such a composed way about something that I can see and hear in your voice is so terrifying. We're talking to you because of technology from a point of safety. I just want to tell you to run and hide because the forces are so close. What are you personally going to do? What is your plan?
Well, once again, my plan remains as it was. It is to stay in Kyiv. It is to do what I can to defend. If Russian troops do come in from this side, if Russian troops come into central Kyiv, to the regions, I will also join the defense, whether it's Molotov cocktails, whether it's, once again, helping defend any points in the city. So right now, me, just like, the entirety of the Kyiv civilian population is very ready to do whatever it takes to defend our capital, because this is the last stand and we're not giving up our government and we're not giving up our country. Am I terrified? Of course I am. I am not used to rockets flying over my head. I'm not used to hearing about, my friends in civilian areas getting injured or having their family getting injured. But this, to me, this is my life, and this is my country's entire future and identity. This isn't some outside political conflict where there's some kind of cost-benefit economic analysis. These are people's lives, and this is my life. And you know what? To the extent of staying here and looking after my country, I'm not scared. I'm not scared of taking the consequences this requires. I do not believe that Putin and his government deserve my fear or any Ukrainian fear. So I am not planning to run.
Well, look, it's extraordinary courage and bravery that you are showing, Valentina. We are sending all our love and support, and we will stay in touch with you undoubtedly. Do your best to try and stay as safe as you possibly can.